raise questions, contribute in guiding the candidate, and also score. He's the external examiner. Professor Andrew Peter Ziga is the supervisor. He will listen to the presentation, record and take major concerns by the panelists, give clarifications, will not score. Then on the panel is also Dr. Charles Edako, is also the supervisor. We listen to the presentation by the candidate, record major concerns. So the panel is hereby constituted, and on that note, I will ask the public to, including the candidate, to give us a few minutes out, and we'll call you back It is a question and answer session of 45-21, and you can begin now.
Chairperson, and allow me to convey a note of appreciation to our online audience who are listening to us from within and out of this environment. Thank you so much. The focus of my study was youth retains one of the highest incidences of youth unemployment. And according to the National Household Survey, 2016-2017 by Voce, national youth unemployment rate stands at 64%, with Wakiso district constituting 28% of that bulk. But in an earlier survey, 1999-2000, by the same institution, it was established that 51.9% of youth in Wakiso district could not even meet their health and other needs. Now, what remains unclear to the researcher is the extent to which YLP has achieved its objective of empowering youth for improved standards of living. The objectives of the study are four. Chairperson, the general objective was to assess the effectiveness of youth livelihood program on youth empowerment in Wakiso district with a view of coming up with a model for effective youth empowerment. Specifically, the study sought to describe the extent to which YLP has provided vocational skills for youth self-employment in Wakiso district. Secondly, to explain the extent to which financial support has enabled youth to establish income-generating activities. Third, to describe the extent to which YLP has increased levels of entrepreneurship among youth in Wakiso district. And fourth was to evaluate the extent to which knowledge and information has been provided for positive mindset change among youth in Wakiso district. Chairperson displayed the research questions which directly correspond to the specific objectives. The scope of the study is phased in three. The first is the geographical scope, and geographically the study was conducted in Wakiso district, which is one of those districts located in the central region of Uganda. Content-wise, the study assessed the effectiveness of youth livelihood program on youth empowerment in Wakiso district. The time scope is 5 years. The period is 2013-2018. The researcher looked at this period and considered it adequate enough for a program of YLP magnitude to have yielded results among the beneficiaries. The justification of the study: now key global development and financial institutions, including regional groupings, namely the United Nations Development Program, the World Bank, EAC, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, are all advocating for youth empowerment as a priority measure. One, to ensure inclusive and meaningful growth. Two, as a response measure to the bulging youth population. And three, for a meaningful and sustainable development. And therefore, in that context, they are urging governments to design programs that aim at addressing the existing bottlenecks to youth empowerment. Now, since youth empowerment is a priority focus, when you look at Uganda's development blueprint, now National Development Plan 3, we already done 1 and 2, now 3. The focus is on youth empowerment. There is need for government to engage in evidence-based programming and be able to undertake adjustments that are based on evidence from studies such as this one. Chairperson, I'll move to the next, which is literature review. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for a consistent, coherent, and logical flow, the researcher reviewed literature thematically and identified the necessary gaps as appropriate, which included knowledge, context, and others were methodological. Studies reviewed on livelihoods and empowerment, for example, that one by Jang and others, in 2016, adopted a positivist paradigm. Therefore, they were largely quantitative studies. Now, while these studies are not bad, they have so many positive aspects associated with them, they are not able to reveal or to bring out the thick and rich descriptions that of people's lived experiences that are associated with studies located within interpretivist paradigm or qualitative studies. One dominant observation here was that several reviewed studies, for instance, the one of Alb and Scott, Kranz and Scones, these were all based on Western contextual settings. So there are very little regard and application for local settings. Now, Dweck addresses the issue of mindset. In other words, he focuses on the way people think in order to fulfill their potential. However, his approach is in general. He approaches this issue in general, and he does not specifically refer to the youth as and empowerment in particular. The World Bank and UNESCO are also addressing the issue of technical vocational education and training. In other words, they focus on skilling for labor market requirements, and that's a remedy for the rising unemployment. But there is no specific focus on empowerment vis-a-vis youth as a bulging category among developing countries. Lastly, the studies reviewed also do not bring out the effects of financial support for income generating activities without prior skilling and systematic mentorship. My study is going to covers all those gaps. Chairperson, I have a bivariate framework with the Youth Livelihood Program as the independent variable and youth empowerment as the dependent. Now, as you can see, the YLP with its constituting elements of skills development, financial support, entrepreneurship, positive mindset, and the other side on my right, the youth empowerment with the indicators of self or group employment, increased incomes, improved savings, asset acquisition, IGAs, and positive mindset change. I will proceed to methodology, Chairperson. Now, when you look at the table over there, the methodology I have divided into four. First, the research philosophy. Second, the research paradigm. Third, research approach. Fourth, research design. Now, this under the research philosophy, I will address three aspects, Chairperson. The first one is the epistemology. Now, epistemologically, the study was subjective because much of the meaning of the data that you see in the book or that you are going to see that I'm going to display and share is largely due to the thinking, to the knowledge, awareness, background of the researcher, influenced by his interactions with the concerned respondents. Ontologically, the research was relative because of the belief by the researcher that the aspect under study or under focus had multiple realities which could only come to light after infusing himself with the concerned respondents. Axiologically, the research was value-free. This was because of the need to control biases that are associated with researches located within interpretivist paradigms. The research paradigms are simply views, world views of researchers or people, the way you see things, and that can have an implication on how you go about data collection, on how you analyze, on how you interpret, and so on. Now, while paradigms are many, including positivism, post-positivism, interpretivism, and so on, this study adopted interpretivism. Because of the belief by the researcher that there can be no understanding of social world without interpretation. So we can be able, under interpretivism as a paradigm, you are able to construct reality as you interact with the respondents. You are able to benefit from the thick and rich descriptions depending on how they understand their world or the world in which they live in. It also draws you closer to the participants and helps you to draw on naturalist methods. The research approach was a qualitative approach. This approach is well known is the best one for assessing attitudes, where you are dealing with opinions and other behaviors that are likely of a subjective nature and not expressly measurable. The research design is a descriptive phenomenological design. This design is appropriate for qualitative studies in as much as it facilitates focus on lived experiences and is based on personal insights. The researcher was able to apply this in describing the experiences and getting to understand what people regard as meaning and why. The chairperson, I proceed to the area of study, which Wakiso district with we normally refer to as eligibility criteria. Now, one had to be a YLP beneficiary. Those were the key targets. Then a member of a youth group under YLP support. And the other one is for the LCs, you have to be in the area where beneficiaries are operating. And sorry, Chair, my time. Okay. Then the YLP focal persons at the district and the sub-county levels, and then, Chair, it's not possible we leave you. Sorry, Chair, I can now proceed. I was sharing about the inclusion and exclusion criteria. One had the YLP focal persons at the district and sub-county levels, and then the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development officials with the YLP obligation. Now that is the constitutive criteria for participant inclusion. My sample size determination. Now, in the previous slide, I detailed the sample derivation, but I am bringing this to be able to emphasize and provide a little more detail to anchor some facts that I provided in my earlier slide. Now, it is a known fact that sample size determination for qualitative studies remains an issue of contention. So many authors do not agree on what is sufficient and what is not. However, considering that this was a qualitative study, or a study located within an interpretivist paradigm, the researcher at hand. However, the guiding principle is thematic circulation, which is that point when adding more participants, so interacting with more participants, ceases to yield new information. Now, that was the other principle that guided that. Chairperson, I'll move to data collection methods and instruments. Now, the first column details the methods, the second column, the corresponding instruments, the third, to whom the particular methods were applied, and the fourth is the justification. Now, in-depth interviews, group interviews, documentary reviews, and observation were the key methods here. These are also categorized as naturalist methods. They are methods that are aligned to interpretivist research because the researcher utilizes them to infuse himself or to draw you closer to the participants, because you seek to understand their world, so you must get into their world. Now, the corresponding instruments are as reflected interview guides, interview guide, checklist, and so on. Then the people, the categories to whom they were applied. But just to pick one here, the justification for in-depth interviews, for example, these were considered as appropriate in studying and understanding the meaning that people attach to things in their lived worlds. That is appropriate in that and the rest of the others. Data quality control remains an issue of paramount importance in interpretivist research. Now, unlike in positivism and post-positivism, where we talk about validity and reliability external validity, internal validity in researches like this one that are located within an interpretivist paradigm. We replace those with 4 things: credibility, transferability, confirmability, and credibility, and dependability. Those are the 4. Now, to ensure data quality control, the researcher laid emphasis on 3, on credibility, on transferability, and confirmability. Credibility is how congruent the findings are with existing reality. Now, this can be really a challenge. However, to be able to ensure this, the researcher adopted appropriate and well-organized research methods and considered early familiarity with respondents, and also utilized different methods. Now, this was important in order to be able to control and ensure credibility. Then transferability, according to Denzin and Lincoln, consider this as part of generalizability in positivist research. Now, to be able to ensure that we can generalize this information is worth for generalization, the researcher provides for sufficient contextual information about the study site and the detailed description of phenomena in question to be able to facilitate whoever wants to make comparisons and contrasts as may be appropriate. And then under confirmability, these were steps taken to ensure that findings reflect experiences and ideas of respondents and not the own ideas and opinions as may be preferred by the researcher. Now, in this context, the researcher applied multiple methods to reduce investigator bias, admitted beliefs, the existing beliefs that must be taken into context, and the assumptions, and recognized the shortcomings in the existing study methodology. Chairperson, in the process of research, I dealt with what I'm referring to as gatekeepers. These are individuals who stand in between you as the researcher or data collector and the community. Now, they are very important because they hold the key. Without them, you may not be able to extract information or access their areas within their jurisdiction. These were very influential. To me, they acted as bridges and they linked the researcher to the respondents. They ably advised on what to expect in terms of culture and in terms of action and practices in view of the local meanings attached to them. And in some cases, they were very helpful in assigning an individual who was familiar with these areas to navigate the researcher around the communities. And the data processing and analysis, information from transcripts, notes, audio recordings, and text docs were analyzed using thematic and content analysis techniques. Content analysis technique involved categorization of data through development and application of codes as appropriate, and after data categorization, themes, patterns, and existing relationships were identified. Data was summarized with a view of linking the research findings to the study objectives. Now, research located within interpretivist paradigm is associated with huge volumes of data. And in most cases, this becomes a challenge. Now, I was able, as the researcher was able to overcome this by undertaking daily transcriptions after every interview at the end of the day. This is how he was able to navigate the challenge of huge volumes of data. Now, ethically, the researcher undertook steps and observed measures that are provided for to ensure that the research is conducted within the acceptable ambit of research regulations. And as you can see, work was subjected to the necessary authorities for verification and approvals. The National Council at the national level, National Council for Science and Technology, and then the Wakiso district authorities, the Internal Review Board at Clark International University, and our own Directorate for Postgraduate Studies and Research here, and then the respondents or participants. Consent was sought and appropriately obtained. Under the limitations of the study, observed 3 of them. The time factor, there was coincidence with COVID, which briefly interrupted, but were able to resume soon after the situation permitted. Tracing of respondents, this presented difficulties in some incidences because so many of these beneficiaries have actually failed to meet their beneficial obligations of remitting back the money, and therefore they have gone into hiding. Some others have even changed telephone numbers and known locations. We were able to trace these with the help of my research assistant. Then the nature of data collection methods were naturalist. These ones draw me closer, require the respondent, require the researcher rather, to be drawn closer to the respondents. Now, sometimes, of course, I am not sure if those people were not suspicious of me. And possibly if I had not used naturalist methods, maybe I would have acquired information in excess of what I had or different from what I was able to acquire. So that proved a challenge in that context. Now, under the philosophical and historical underpinnings, ladies and gentlemen, the research was anchored on 3 philosophies: the Ubuntu philosophy, Bulungi Bwansi, and Ujama. Chairperson, for purposes of clarity and effective explanation, allow me move to the implications of the 3 philosophies on livelihoods and empowerment. Now, in practice, all the mentioned philosophies reflect a sense of communal responsibility and care for communal resources upon which community members base their living, their livelihood. Now, based on the foundations, they are all based on the foundation of social justice, welfare, good governance, leadership, and morality, which are very, very scarce aspects today. And because of their absence, we have seen the collapse and failure of so many enterprises. Now, above all, I observe that the key tenets, the tenets as outlined above, as you can see, are in line with the aspirations for social empowerment in as far as they emphasize livelihoods, not only livelihoods, but those that are sustainable, then peace and stability for productivity, and they also support efficiency and effectiveness, okay, that would help in controlling corruption and mismanagement, which has proved a cancerous aspect today and has contributed to the failure of many programs of YLP nature. Then they also take care of good governance, because the principle is I am because we are. So it means that your issue is my issue, your concern is my concern, and therefore I cannot eat what should be yours or what should provide you with general good. And then the historical origin and trend of livelihoods. I am tracing the issue of livelihoods from 1911 with the works of Vidal de la Blanches. He undertook to study the modes of life. And then secondly, progressively, because the issue of livelihoods has been progressive. Secondly, in 1977, Polanyi advanced the livelihood of man, and this was the first theoretical account of livelihoods. Now, from then, Polanyi hoped to develop a holistic and human-centered, socially and culturally embedded economic science. Now, from then, there has been these livelihoods have been under construction. Now in the 1980s, we see the emergence of livelihoods research as understood today. And the emphasis is on people-centeredness and survival of people at risk. Now, the people at risk is an element of vulnerability now, which is being embedded, which was embedded in the livelihoods research. Now, in 92, we see another element joining in, the sustainable livelihood approach. Now, that was occasioned, brought to the fore by the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, that livelihood should not simply be livelihoods, but they should be an element of sustainability, to be as a way of guaranteeing the survival mechanisms of the people. 1993, Robert Chambers and Conway, who are prominent livelihood scholars, redefined livelihoods to include capabilities, assets, resources required for meaningful living. Now, more recently, we see the Institute for Development Studies and Directorate for International Development operationalizing the sustainable livelihood approach with a slight amendment. Here, they broaden the earlier view of livelihoods to include livelihood strategies. Those are means and ways by which livelihoods can actually be secured, to include institutional processes, the support mechanism. Now, under YLP, that's not provided for, and I'll be explaining some of the reasons why the process is actually staggering. And then the organization structures, because we need to nurture. There is need for nurturing, especially that you are dealing with young people. Giving me and not supporting me may not be enough. So that is the historical trend. A chairperson on the study findings, I am presenting the characteristics and the themes, sub-themes on my extreme right, which will be explained in the subsequent slides. But here, under the characteristics, prominent is the sex and the age category, marital status, academic qualifications, and period in current employment. I will be explaining the themes in the subsequent slides. Now, this is the data analysis framework. Ladies and gentlemen, don't worry. This is the analysis framework. And I felt that I should present the analysis framework here because it is the basis for the direct voices which are reflecting in the subsequent or in the coming slides. So this is the genesis, containing the theme, the sub-themes, the categories, and then the coding. Because one would say, but that slide is very congested. No, that is the analysis framework for objective 1. Now, to proceed, and YLP and provision of vocational skills for youth self-employment. Now, to be able to manage this, it was broken down into a series of sub-questions that helped the researcher to extract needed information from the respondents. Now, regarding knowledge of YLP, most of the respondents knew and could ably articulate the objective of YLP, and only 2 could not. The reason here was that they were simply co-opted into enterprise because there was that requirement of meeting the gender threshold. And so the male counterparts were looking out for their female counterparts just to be able to meet the gender threshold. Now, what was outstanding here as a theme was youth grant. That is regarding the 2, as indicated by the view by one of the respondents that YLP is meant to benefit us since we are the majority, and yet government has no other way of keeping us busy. Idle youth turn into opposition supporters, disturbing government all the time. Now, this was direct quotation, response by the 2 who did not adequately understand. And regarding the skills possessed, These were diverse, ranging from carpentry, hairdressing, bricklaying, all through to welding and metal fabrication. However, what is outstanding here was that all the respondents indicated that the skills they possessed were not acquired from YLP. In other words, YLP only assisted them to practice what they already had. Okay? Now, the theme here was self-made youth, supported by the narrative below. Now, for one to benefit from YLP, you had to be skilled already and actively involved in a running enterprise. YLP was interested in already skilled persons with running enterprise. So they don't help you want to acquire skills, but practice what you have using the support given. Now, this was one of the respondents dealing in home and body care products in one of the group interviews. Now, when asked if they had been provided with equipment and tools to assist them in their trades, all these respondents say that they had not received any tools or equipment, but we are quick to add that the minister who promised them only made a promise and did not fulfill. Now, the theme that emerged here was unfulfilled promises, as expressed by one of the respondents, that initially we had been promised equipment and toolkits to help us improve quality and value of our products, but we have never received them. And worst of all is that the minister who promised was shifted to another ministry, so it's unlikely that tools will be delivered. Ladies and gentlemen, owing to the key findings that YLP did not provide enterprise-specific training to beneficiaries, that there are no, YLP has no affiliations or established vocational training centers for beneficiary skilling, and that it focused on already on dealing with youth that were already skilled, and the respondents' admission that they did not acquire their skills from YLP. It is therefore inferred by the researcher that YLP has not provided the critical component of vocational skills acquisition, and yet this is very fundamental in driving youth into self-employment. Now, this finding also sharply contrasted with the studies of Kahira, Antil, Grissom, and Mackenzie, and Femba, and others, who actually contend that to be able to drive youth or individuals into self-employment, then vocational skilling must be part and parcel of the whole process arrangement. Ladies and gentlemen, I move to objective 2. This is the data analysis framework for objective 2, where I have the theme, the sub-themes, the categories, and the codes. Again, I am laying them because they are the basis for the respondents' voices as provided for in the subsequent slides. When asked which kind of income-generating activities the respondents were engaged in, they mentioned several, and as I have indicated, and then the sources of their startup capital, these were also several, ranging from personal savings, group contributions, loan from SACCO, loan from banks. Now, what came out here was convenience to determine which way a particular individual goes. And this was supported by the narrative that different groups obtained their startup capital in many different ways. Some opted for bank loans and SACCOs, others personal savings. Some of us who were unable to access through any of the above mobilized capital through group contributions. So the ways were different depending on prevailing circumstances. Now, then probed on how they utilized the support that they received, respondents indicated recapitalization expansion and for purposes of enterprise sustainability. Now the theme here was beneficiary support, as supported by the narrative below. But yes, we received a one-off financial support from YLP. That's why we are still in business to date. Otherwise, our business had greatly declined due to rising costs of inputs and under capitalization. Now, this was the response by one of the youth dealing in welding and metal fabrication. Chairperson, allow me conclude objective 2 by making this observation. Owing to the key finding that YLP financial support was directed to beneficiaries with existing enterprises, that YLP funds largely facilitated recapitalization, expansion, and sustainability of beneficiary enterprises, and that no beneficiary indicated receiving funds to establish an income-generating activity. It was observed that YLP did not provide funds for establishment of income-generating activities, but rather for continuity and expansion of existing YLP ventures. Now, it is also noted that financial support provided was awfully inadequate to provide for sustainability and continuity of beneficiary enterprises. Ladies and gentlemen, Madam Chair, this is the data analysis for objective 3. Again, I am laying it because it is the basis upon which the respondents' voices, as reflected in the direct quotations, are derived. Now, this was testing YLP and increase in levels of entrepreneurship. Now, taking entrepreneurship to be a process of developing, organizing, and managing business ventures along with any of its risks to make profit. That's according to Glacier and others in 2006. Now, regarding entrepreneurial training for YLP beneficiaries, findings revealed that YLP did not give enterprise-specific training to beneficiaries. Rather, they received training of a basic nature on key aspects like record keeping. And what was outstanding here was active engagement supported by the narrative below. YLP dealt with youth already in ventures, and as such, our thinking was that beneficiaries were already knowledgeable enough in their ventures. However, we trained them in bookkeeping, and in rare cases, community development of theses talk about specific enterprise. But you can see that this is in rare cases. It was not an organized mechanism. And another community development officer indicated that while the training given to beneficiaries was not enterprise specific, the practice of bringing them together for training on basics was to facilitate sharing of experiences, challenges, and good practices, which in a way enhanced their capabilities in enterprise management. And regarding entrepreneurial status of beneficiaries before and after youth YLP intervention, findings established that while youth had actively running ventures prior to YLP support, majority were found to be operating under capacity due to small capital base. Now, what was outstanding here was little capital, as observed by one of the respondents, that our business was financially weak with very few products to sell and display. However, with acquisition of YLP funds, we were able to recapitalize. We feel much stronger as a business. Now, this was a response by one of the respondents dealing in furniture and carpentry works in one of the group interviews. Findings also revealed that prior YLP, many youth were operating unregistered ventures and therefore were unable to access support from banks and from microfinance institutions. And the engagement with YLP forced them into formalization of their enterprises and businesses. Therefore, what was outstanding here was enterprise registration as supported by the narrative below, that one of the prerequisites for accessing YLP financial support was formal registration of enterprise. And so, youth had no option but register as a way of increasing their chances of qualifying for support. This was a narrative by one of YLP focal persons in an in-depth interview conducted. In conclusion, yeah? Okay. I will display the data analysis framework for objective 4 and straight away move through to provision of knowledge and information to facilitate positive mindset change. Now, key findings here. It was observed that when asked about information about YLP in general, the responses were varied. Others picked from politicians, others radios, and others CDOs. Now here, what was coming out was absence of clear communication channels as supported by the narrative below, that I got to know about YLP from radio and politicians within our area. At first, it was really hard to understand how to go about it, being part of it, because politicians told us what they know. I realized that every politician was presenting YLP as their own initiative. And I'll move to the next area of probing the interest of time. Now, sections of respondents held negative opinion regarding what they do, because especially those who had qualifications of diploma and degree. And what was really of respondents that we expected to be given information that is specifically tailored to our project. But to our surprise, what they gave us was general, to do with bookkeeping. So as a group, we are not contented, because what they did did not add much. That is one of the respondents. And I'll straight away move to the conclusion that, basing on the findings that YLP lacks well-established information channels of communication, absence of systematic process of youth engagement in activities to nurture the positive mindset dynamics, and lack of a well-established centers through which youth can access, can organize and respond to beneficiaries' information needs. Information being relayed was not tailored and designed to facilitate development of a positive attitude, and that the CDOs and the local councils who are being relied on to provide information and knowledge in so many cases were not adequately knowledgeable in mindset dynamics. It is therefore inferred that YLP has not provided knowledge and information. What it has provided is only to a limited extent that has not had any substantial impact on mindsets of youth. And that contravenes it sharply contrasts with Hannah and others in their framework for mindset change. Ladies and gentlemen, I will quickly run through my contribution to knowledge, owing to the gaps identified in the current community-driven demand model, where the beneficiaries are key participants. And that is a positive aspect, but I found that the model lacks an independent entity to perform the M and E function, and therefore the component of feedback was highly compromised. I also found that in the CDD model, there are so many layers, right from the expression of interest all through to processing. Now, these layers are not bad, but they provide a high level of bureaucratic red tape, and they also facilitate corrupt tendencies and so on. So it's against this background that the researcher advanced a new model called the Sustainable Utilitarian Youth Empowerment Model, or SUYE. Now, other than the gaps that are identified above, the model also took into account the challenges that are impeding the progress, the views and opinions of the beneficiaries. Ladies and gentlemen, as I draw towards the conclusion, the assumptions of this model include the following, but I'll straight away go to the model itself. Now, it is a four-phased model comprised of one. If you look at A, is the Youth Livelihood Program, or YLP, and B is Youth Empowerment, C are the participative services, and D is the Sustainable Utilitarian Youth Empowerment. Now, to begin with one, YLP, if the following are done: skills development, skills given to youth, financial support extended, a positive mindset, help to acquire a positive mindset, that would lead to empowering the youth, and it would reflect based on through the indicators reflected there. They would be able to go into self or group employment. They would be able to increase their incomes. They would be able to improve their savings. They would be able to acquire assets and income generating activities. Now, the participative services here, please consider the participative services as engagement activities within the context of the need to nurture and mentor the youth. So giving is not enough. You must be available to support through seminars, through workshops, and many other engagements. Those are the participative services here. And with that, what I am calling resilience is that ability to withstand, because there are many shocks and challenges within this. That is why there is a very high rate of enterprise, YLP enterprise failure. Then optimism towards activities, that is the mindset. If I am optimistic, it means that I have hope, and therefore I can hang on. So when that is done, you see, number 3, that would lead to youth empowerment as well. And then participative services, as I've explained, would also contribute to the sustainable utilitarian youth empowerment. And if those are taken care of, the co-curricular, the co-creative participatory systems established, sustainable youth programs which are based on need, utilitarian relationship progression because they need mentorship and nurturing, and then empowerment training activities. These would be also a process of mentorship. Then please pay attention as I conclude to the middle entity, which is an M&E function that I largely found absent. Because of its absence, there is no feedback, there is no harmony, and responding to the emerging issues in YLP has been a big challenge, and that has contributed to the high rate of enterprise failure. I am therefore, chairperson, proposing that once that function is operationalized, as you can see the arrows there, we should not wait at the end. Rather, the function should be embedded within every phase, because in everything that we do, whether we are taking money to the youth, we are running after something. Now, do we achieve? So we can evaluate even at the beginning, midway, and at the end. So that should be a robust function. Ladies and gentlemen, I have recommendations on objective 1. For purposes of time, I'll run through 1.1. The Ministry of Gender and Labour and Social Development, which a YLP Secretariat sits, should undertake to review the program and provide for setting up of vocational training centers with a view of equipping youth with skills. Secondly, the same institution should undertake to mobilize and secure adequate financial resources so that they can be able to match the existing magnitude of need. Some youth have not been able to progress because the finances provided are so meager, and therefore they have not enabled them to pursue and realize their aspirations. On objective 3, Madam Chair, as I conclude, the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development should undertake to set up entrepreneurship training centers well equipped with experienced staff including counselors and trained vocational people to offer the training sessions. They should also equip YLP coordinators and stakeholders with necessary competencies and tools to be able to carry out their work. And lastly, the very last one is that the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development should undertake to establish designated centers within the community to facilitate knowledge and information provision and facilitate youth engagement, to interface with professional counselors, to assist them with their relationships so that they can be able to concentrate and improve on their performances. There is also need to tailor knowledge and information provision to youth needs. Ladies and gentlemen, Madam Chair, I appreciate you all. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Noah. Members present and those following us online. We are now going into a question and answer session, and we are going to give the first chance to the external examiner, Dr. Kabagambe. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, the chairperson of this panel, and thank you very much the candidate and the presenter. I would appreciate if you take us to the first slide. But thank you for thanking us. With that, thank you. Let's go to your beginning. Because your beginning is the reason we are here. So we want to be with you from the beginning. Mr. Ssendawula Noah, I want to appreciate your work. I enjoyed reading it, and the Youth Livelihood Program and Empowerment in Wakiso District in Uganda is indeed topical, and it is something worth bringing people together to talk about. Your area of study is interesting, but not only interesting, but worth studying, given what we are pursuing as a country and as a people. I have, after that appreciation, I have a few questions for you, and we don't have time, which means I don't know whether it will be a yes, no, or the chair will guide. I thought I would break my questions into 3 sets to give you opportunity to respond to them. But first, what is a variable? That's why I was, what is a variable? What makes youth livelihood program a variable? And the third question is, why did you not take this study from the positivist point of view, and you gladly pursued the interpretivism point of view? I would need those responses.
I think that answer what you like.
Can't you answer without a microphone? But we have our audiences.
Okay, okay, thank you very much for the question from Professor Kabatano. I'll begin with the last one. Why I did not take the study from a positivist point of view. Why I did not take the study from a positivist point of view. Professor, it was possible to undertake a study from that point of view, but what I was interested in is to understand the experiences of the youth, so the beneficiaries. So I was pursuing an in-depth understanding of the beneficiaries, what they are experiencing within the context of the program.
Okay.
And,
Okay, thank you. Point made. What questions did you pose to look for that in-depth, like you have called it? What kind of questions did you ask to create you or to dive you into understanding that insight?
The questions were also contextual, in view of what, for example?
Can I refer you to page 15? Do you have your book there?
Yes, I have. Page 15?
Yes. Based on your answer, I want to refer you to page 15. Yes. And you read for yourself, but I will help. Just read one question for time. I'm trying to answer that question of, I wanted to get the deep or the depth. And the question is, to what extent has Youth Livelihood program been able to provide vocational skills for youth help, for youth self-employment in Wakiso? To what extent? So I was wondering, did these give you the depth? Did they give you that depth? Okay. Okay. Go to the other two.
Okay. The other one was what makes YLD valuable, and you also asked what a valuable is. A valuable is something that can change depending on the situation or depending on some influences that may be contextual, external, internal, something like that.
Correct.
Yes.
And on page 1, you indicated that Youth Livelihood program is a variable. And I was wondering, is Youth Livelihood program not the name of the program? Isn't it a noun? Is it a variable? What is variable in the Youth Livelihood program? Could it have been they call it what? A slip of the tongue, but this one is written. Is it a slip of the pen? What is variable in the Youth Livelihood program? You can think of it. Allow me, Chair, to proceed to the next set. You do not have to answer everything. Some are for you, yeah. I want to ask you also regarding population. And I was wondering, what population did you target? And we are told, when you are clear on your population, you will be clear on your study subjects. So what was your population?
The population that I targeted were YLP beneficiaries.
Are you putting a comma or a full stop?
YLP beneficiaries, the focal persons at the lower levels, district and sub-counties, and then the local councils.
Okay. Okay. I hear you. your problem statement, you seem to be concerned with the youth empowerment.
Yes, Prof.
And I didn't mesh well how the other characters came into the study, and I will buttress that with somewhere where I also got confused. I will invite you to page 228. I'm about to stop. You don't have to be worried. Page 228. On page 228, you have an interview guide for Youth Livelihood Program beneficiary youth groups. But the same was used for MGLSD officials, also district and sub-county YLP focal persons, and they were all required to answer these questions. I'm interested in part section B, where all these groups should answer, how have these skills helped you in your livelihood endeavors? I'm trying to build a case that perhaps you did not clarify on who needed to be studied. How can different people answer the same question, and those different people are indeed different in your question, in your research question you are pursuing? Are these people supposed to have to be empowered? You don't have to answer that perhaps, but you need to. Why did you ask different people, different persons in different populations, the same questions? What did you want to achieve?
Prof, thank you for that observation. Sometimes the question is posed to the beneficiary, where the same are posed to the officials, because the idea was to be able to post take and do a problem.
I hear you.
In-depth clarification.
I hear you, sir. I hear you, sir. But how do you validate an answer I have given from another person whom it does not concern? For example, how have these skills helped you in your livelihood endeavors? Helped me. And then another person gives an answer whose answer is true. If the ministry says they have not helped him,
that is in reference to the beneficiaries.
I mean they are having the same tool.
It's because they are giving different responses, and some of these different responses needed to be pulled further.
Mr. Noah Ssendawula, I think we are on a different wavelength. Maybe were you jumping certain questions? You would say, this is not for you, I will give you this one. Although you have the same questions supposed to pose to you, but would you selectively miss? Maybe that one I can take. But if they all had to go through the same tool, I was reading the headline, they are all supposed to partake it.
No, Prof, I was only following through, especially on aspects that needed clarification.
Okay.
And in-depth understanding.
I think you will mop up that appendix. The reader cannot know that detail, how you were selectively avoiding this, avoiding that. Yeah, we look at a tool and we know which kind of data you are eliciting. In this study, in any study at PhD, wherever study, there is a unit of analysis, there is a unit of inquiry. Unit of analysis, unit of inquiry. I don't know whether that is new to you or you are familiar.
I am familiar with the unit of analysis.
Yes.
Which is a subject and a focus.
So who was your unit of, you are familiar with the unit of analysis? Yes? Thank you, and that's what I want. What was the unit of analysis for this study? Beneficiaries. Thank you very much. Were these beneficiaries as groups or individuals?
These beneficiaries were groups.
Thank you.
However,
Thank you. We want to save time. They are groups. And I've listened that they are really groups. They need to be registered as groups. Do you work in as an individual or you are a group? Are beneficiaries, do they access these services as individuals or as a group?
they access as groups.
Thank you.
Yes.
Did you study them as groups or you studied them as individuals?
Prof, it was a combination.
Okay.
There were some that where it was not easy to access all the issue groups.
Okay.
And in some cases, out of a group of 10 people, you had another 5.
I
And
hear you.
therefore, you get, you find 4, you find slightly more. So there was that variation.
It's okay, Noah. Yeah, I get it. Because it disturbed me, that's why I've put it to you. This study, ideally, by its nature, it should focus on groups as a unit of analysis, as a groups, because that's the conceptualization of this program. By studying individuals, you are not pursuing this program. This program is unit, is individual, is group based, and that leads me to the data. The data on, if you check results on page 109. Just speaking some salient things just for our time. 109. And I have also been educated by the tools and your procedures. You can clarify to this panel. You increasingly studied individuals. And how did you aggregate this outcome? On page 109, we are not sure whether our business will stand, blah, 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 blah. This is like a focus group. And I have not seen whether you studied these groups in any of your methodological strands. How did you come to feel for the group, and yet you, as you have concurred, you looked at individuals. Groups became difficult. You pursued individuals, but at a certain point, they are speaking as a group. How did that happen?
This was a group where actually it was expressed that we are not sure whether our business will stand the test of time because of the enormous pressures surrounding our enterprises. We have to pay back loans, we need to pay back, we need to pay rent, and also we need to survive and support our family. But yet our businesses are weak and they don't generate much. So this was a response.
So who is speaking? Whose voice is that?
This was a group view.
A group voice.
This one on behalf of the team.
Okay. That is an individual voice on behalf of the team. Don't you think you missed the team? If the team denied him, how would you resolve that?
So there was concurrence. Because these groups have actually.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Ssendawula. Let us leave that area. Let us leave that area. Let us leave that area. And when you look at page 65, and I like it because with the qualitative studies, the expectation is the themes, patterns, and relationships and others. I want to commend the presentation here. unfortunately, this is what you denied us who read your work. You denied the readers what you have done here. You denied us. If I had not come here, I wouldn't have known that you analyzed actually the themes, those who ended in them. I don't know how information. We are paying subsidiary. Lastly, I want to end this. I have made all my report, so I don't have to spend more time. I'm here to highlight some of the things. The last one is, in your view, what is the difference between limitations of the study and challenges of the study? Are they the same? Are they different? What I'm saying, what is there a difference between limitations of the study and challenges of the study? Do they exist, first of all? Can you recognize, can you also be like your colleagues, scholars? Why are you different? And when you are, why do you want to be different? Studies have challenges, studies have limitations. Do you want to be different? I'm appealing to you to follow the rubric. I don't know whether the university dismisses one of them, but and what I noticed when I read your work, what you call the limitations are actually challenges. That's why I've put this to you. By you, we shall be fed on the many which we find not palatable. So, Madam Chair, in the middle, I adopted this interaction as a way of minimizing, and I've gotten what I wanted, and he has responded to my questions. So, thank you.
Doctor, you just pass on the mic to the next person. That's another question.
Sure.
Yes, you have
Thank you very much, the external examiner. And I would like to thank Mr. Ssendawula for your topic that is of current interest. And I liked the way you were explaining the qualitative rubrics in the PowerPoint and in the presentation, and also the way you unfold different verbatims in the book. First of all, allow me to take you to your title. In your title, when you say you are looking at youth livelihood programs in Wakiso district, Uganda, are you closing this kind of study to only Wakiso district? And if so, why didn't you take Wakiso district as a case? Hope you are following me. Good? Let me ask you three, then you respond. That's my first concern. And my second concern is on your theories. Because any study, if you embarked on theories, it will help you to understand the concepts, either in the conceptual framework or in the literature. You used the two theories in the background of your study, but I'm wondering, how do the theories apply to your study? You talked about Ghana's theory. I'm wondering, how does it apply to your study? And which gaps did Ghana leave out that forced you to go for the critical theory of Rappaport? Okay. My third one, Denny, I'll leave you to respond, is on the contextual background and the problem statement. What was the problem you identified in the contextual background that ended up into the problem statement? Can you educate us on that? Then I'll take you on the next.
Okay, thank you, Dr. The first one is we wanted to know why I limited the study to Wakiso and not extend it to other areas. Both I am alive to the fact that this youth livelihood program is a nationwide program, and therefore in my design, in my geographical design, I had to get some limitations for manageability and operationalization of what I thought was critical.
Thank you. Hope you realize I'm contesting you putting the scoping into the topic, the aspect of Wakiso, in the main topic where the variables are, because that closes the study to only Wakiso and doesn't open it up to be generalized elsewhere. So I'm wondering, why did you do that? Why wouldn't you start with Uganda, then you make Wakiso a case? Can you educate us on that?
It was about design. That's how I designed the study. Your second question, if you wanted to know how I adopted the two theories, I relied on two theories. While this theory has a lot of requirement, I found it particularly to enable one to understand the existing country and the breakdown of social order, which we see in most of these developing countries. Because these countries are characterized by inability to read what we call demographic dividends.
So what was the gap in Ghana's theory that entailed you to go for the critical theory of Rappaport?
No, my utilization Rappaport was not based on a gap. It helped me to understand development, social, political, and economic dynamics.
Hope you followed that up.
Was in contextual background, and you are asking what kind of gaps.
What is the problem in the context of Wakiso? Yes, in relationship to the topic, because I felt that was silent. Can you come out clear on that? Okay. Thank you. Let me ask my next set of questions. In your methodology, I like the way you put the research there. But I'm wondering, you talked about, you used relative ontology. What is relative ontology in this study? And you'll answer that together with the paradigm. How did you get to the interpretivistic paradigm? Where does it come from and why? That's my first one. My second one is you said you used the purposive sampling. So I'm wondering, how did you use purposive sampling for in-depth interviews? How did you use purposive sampling for observation? So in other words, I need you to explain more. When is purposive sampling used? Would it be used with such in-depth and the observation that you use? One. And my third one is on chapter 4. Chapter 4. In the philosophical underpinning and I'm wondering that who was the major philosopher on your study, and what was the philosophical gap? And in this, where is Uganda's national youth policy in your chapter 4? And where is the cutting edge of knowledge for you to talk about youth livelihood or livelihood issues? So I did not see how the cutting edge of knowledge comes in. Allow me to ask you on your findings. In your findings, of course I have several pages I would have showed you, but on your findings, I'm wondering the way you presented the themes, okay? In qualitative studies, you only put themes there. What was your interpretation of these themes? Because when presenting data, you use the paid method. When presenting this data, what was the interpretation of these themes and what were the discussions? So only in your book I found the themes put, even there you put the themes, but what is the link of these themes with the verbatim and with the topic of study? My next is on your model. Thank you. You developed a model. I am having two questions, or one on your model. Did you test this model? If so, where did you test the model? And what was its workability? Lastly, I saw you put here conclusion. Where are the implications of the findings in your conclusion? In the conclusions of the study, where is the implication of the findings? Because for you to conclude, you should give us the implication of the findings for the objectives. Lastly, in your recommendation, where are you recommending your model? I didn't see that anywhere. Thank you so much. Chairperson, I submit.
Yes, Chairperson and Dr. Pino. In terms of so many one by one, you asked about the philosophy, and you asked about the philosophy of, and that specifically relativist ontology. Now, the relativist ontology is adopted under circumstances where the researcher is investigating something that is like to have under that paradigm, it is a flexible kind of approach. So you use it when you are actually sure that what you are investigating really has a possibility of producing valuable meanings. That is why I adopted a relativist ontology.
And I'm wondering where the relativist ontology is coming from. Because in ontological positions we have reality or realism versus normacy. So if not, I'm wondering where the relativist is coming from.
And where does interpretivism come from? Of interpretivism is used when the researcher uses to investigate something in depth. He is concerned with the why and how of things, and therefore it is also because the research is a qualitative research. So interpretivism will help the researcher that infuse the researcher with the population being investigated. So this is the context here. And then, how do you use purposive sampling? Purposive sampling, there are certain characteristics that I wanted to
where you are employing informal interviews. Also in the in-depth.
Yes.
For your reflection.
Okay. Yes, Prof, it applies. Because these are specific individuals who have responsibility. So they feel within by eligibility and ineligibility criteria, which I reflected in there. It was not for everybody.
Okay, the last one?
And no, not the last one, Chair. Prof was asked about where Uganda is national policy. Prof, I have not made reference to the national policy because
don't you think that is a gap if you are talking about the issue, the historical, philosophical, and the legal aspect on your independent variable, since you are looking at youth livelihood issue?
Prof, I take note of that concern, and I will address it to
give us themes. But what's the meaning in qualitative studies? You go around writing and writing and writing and writing. So what is your explanation? For instance, because the chairperson indicates something, allow me to take you to page 145. Okay? Check on page 145. Check on page 145. Can you clearly explain the meaning of the theme that man?
145?
Yes. On top there you indicate the theme.
Okay. The theme that emerged,
which is funds.
Out of this funds, yes, yeah, because now we get the verbatim that we receive funds and nothing else. Not even the equipment that are being promised. Maybe we need the training that we are
invited. It's a actually just pause. What I mean here, what is the meaning of funds in this section? Before you go to bringing the verbatim, that is purely qualitative data transcription, presentation, and analysis. So tell us, what is funds?
The funds in this context, Prof, were in reference to the needs
How do you not that because I'm not seeing and you're not seeing? That's what I think. That's where did you test your model? If you can answer that.
This model,
Was it tested? Does it work?
so yes, it works. It was tested on selected aspects. For example, there are smaller groups, one group in Katani and another one in Marancha. Now, the other one was considered the control group that we actually subjected to orientation changes.
Where is what you are talking
And
about?
if we don't change,
Take a hit. Where is what you are talking about? If not, you know. It's not that because I didn't see what you are saying.
Dr. Pio, and the present, I'm going to ask that we go to the next members of the panel. Noah, please take note of all the concerns that you raised. After the time, we'll come back to the same. Yes.
Chairperson, the good presentation. I'm not posing them as questions, but you look at them. I read a book, and as he said, I mean, what was presented is much better. It's different for a number of issues that I've raised. I will go quickly, 5 minutes. First, wherever I wrote the statement of the problem. My question was based on what? And I listened to your presentation. Can it be better? You had 3 paragraphs, if I remember now. What you've done there, it was not clear. Based on what? What is the gap? It wasn't through. Maybe it's me who missed it, but I missed it in the book. Even in your presentation, it didn't come through. Just look at it again so that it is clear there. Second point, which goes on my what was the theories you are using. Critical social theory, I picked up because I'm interested in that one. When I read through, and it wasn't clear to me how you use it. You stated it clearly, you are going to use it. Now, in your presentation, well, in the book, it wasn't clear. Would you make clear the way you are going to use it to guide in the study? The next point. Sorry for the pause. There are many little bits, and I'm keeping that time. So, the next point in my trying to marry what you presented and the other was your methodology. Very interesting, I thought. The subjectivity was that, you bring it up now with qualitative research. The focus is on an individual, not as a group. Although you can work as a group, as a startup, I don't know whether these were focus group discussions, then individual to confirm, because the individual is the central part. It was not there. I saw group 1, group, chapter 5 in as the case. You need to go over that. It's hard going if it continues the way it is here. Change. So, group, yes, we focus group, but focus group leads you to in-depth what? At an individual level. So, when you picked an extract from the group, I would have thought you would have added something on the in the video. Maybe he or she said something. Then from joint what you pick up the film is a collection of triangulation. In that chapter, you are having your group response, largely, and I'm bearing in mind 5. 1, that is not trial, it's a question, very many things, and then you come up with a theme. There's one, what did you write? A theme, worry. Because you did not pull all the data that you had. And probably you had the data, but it didn't come through. So you do the triangulation. It's a group what is can be deceptive. It's a pointer. Then you go further to find the reality, because you are looking at then the next one, yeah. Presentation of the data series. I will use chapter 5, but it goes through even, I saw it in chapter 10, is it, or whatever. Problem of the photos. How do I know it is? You correctly say qualitative research has a problem of, is it real? You can't prove it now. When I put these nice pictures here, how do I know they are the reality? I mean, look at wherever you put that. Yes, how do I know?
Compare actually with the beneficiary.
You are there, I don't even see you, despite my glasses. I mean, even if when you are there, fair enough, you are there. Now, what I'm saying is, they are difficult. I'm not saying you shouldn't use them, but make sure that the reader has no question at the back of his mind that maybe this is something. I mean, you go around, you say you can't be so you sit down there and they photograph you. I'm not saying you did it, but there is a problem with using photographs in research, which you must take care of. Make sure that no reasonable doubt about the photo, about whatever you're looking at that. Narratives, are these the group thing we are talking about? In those chapters, they were missing the individual. I mean, even if when we're in a group, when you ask, there is a difference between us here in the group here seated, from professor, second professor, and me, and him. We can say something, but we stand as individuals. So that beat on the individual, please bring it up. Themes, yes, there wasn't enough to draw themes from, if I can generalize. Yes, there wasn't enough to draw a convincing theme. A theme you draw it after triangulation, after different sources. Okay? I have a problem with, as we draw towards the conclusion on this topic, we already know at the outset. Don't you think, I mean, we are Ugandans, and we know that is fair, there's shortage of finances in many of these funded programs, is that we already have something, so maybe you draw something that will convince us, the readers, that finance inadequacy and so on. Is there a way? I know there was finance inadequacy. I didn't go to the field. You also guessed, and then you asked the group, and they said, we don't have money. Didn't you know before? Didn't you have something in your mind, at the back of your mind, that that there is the obvious answer, there isn't enough money? You didn't, you had no idea that a government, wherever it's coming from, there isn't enough money. But I thought that would be clear, so you find a way of making sure that that answer is clearly backed. The last bit, sorry, 5 minutes are over.
Yes, they are.
Oh my God. Let me pick one little thing. Data processing, I think they have covered adequately. Agriculture, I liked that. Did you find anybody in agriculture? You showed us a map. There's agriculture, there's other things. Is there something on agriculture? Did you find any in the study? Poultry is agriculture. I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know about that. Agriculture, maybe that is but agriculture, because you showed us all those, it will be interesting. The variety young people are engaging in of activities where they need. Maybe.
Doctor, in the interest of time.
Yes, thank you very much. Stop.
Yes, Professor. You seem to be unhappy because we are running completely out of time, but you have as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's a wonderful presentation. And, however, when you compare to what is written as the text and the presentation, there is some variance which I think you will need to address. Now, my major concern here in research is the scientific rigor and validity for quality. However much you present and publish, if the scientific rigor and validity of what you're publishing does not measure up to the scientific imperatives of research, the academic world may not easily take your findings and so on and so forth. So, my issues of clarification, one, on external validity, the purpose, methodology, so on and so forth. Now, there is a study, now I'm looking for external validity, which you ably pointed out on page 60 and 61, and you explained very well for validity and the transferability of issues, which means that once a study has been carried out and then you get findings, those findings for the same issues, reasons. Now, my question is, there is a study which was carried out by Mwesigwa David and Claire Mubangizi, and they published their work in 2019. The title of the study was Contributions of the Youth Livelihoods Program to Youth Empowerment in Hoima District. And your study is Youth Livelihood Program and Empowerment. I wonder whether you considered their findings so that there is no reinventing of the wheel. It's very important. You don't need now to study Wakiso, then next time Katabi, when people have already studied similar issues. Why am I pointing out this is that the purpose of your study is to evaluate the effectiveness of YLP on youth empowerment in Wakiso district. And the purpose of the published work was to establish the contribution of YLP to youth empowerment in Hoima district. I wanted you now, if you could capture the purpose, whether you are not doing exactly the same work. Now, another area which I wanted you to note on methodology is the paradigm which you chose, okay, as a guide, the philosophy which you chose as a guide to your study, which is interpretivism, page 52. At the same time, on page 53, you tell us that you have chosen as a design, descriptive phenomenological design. Now, interpretivism is general for qualitative research. But if you are to use, and you have used descriptive phenomenological design to describe, okay, what others in their livelihood are experiencing, just to describe, okay? Now, the person who developed descriptive phenomenological design is called Edmund Husserl. Now, Edmund Husserl gives us the way we should use, the direction of how to use, okay, this design. You have to follow the design, the philosophical design, not the interpretivism. So I wanted you to clarify on that one. Edmund Husserl. I have the quotations of those who have applied it in research on descriptive phenomenological study. Then the respondents from pages 115, 118, 125, 128, 138, you give us responses which amount to 100%. Okay? And now you are violating the rule of saturation in qualitative research. Because in qualitative research, as you have also explained it in your book, is that when you reach a certain number and you don't find similar responses outside the responses, you stop at that. Now you have 67 respondents, and 100% of them you interviewed them, and they are giving you yes, yes, whatever. You don't need to go over the 67 when 30 have said yes, that kind of thing. So saturation was not observed as such in the interpretation. Now another one is data analysis. Could you please help? I don't know, it is too much, because I wanted to see the columns where you indicated the themes, codes, that kind of thing.
Professor,
now,
if you can allow me to do it in 2 minutes, because we only have 2 minutes remaining.
Okay. Let me leave that one.
Can I respond?
Still that.
Yes.
Respond?
Wait a minute.
Now, the presentation of findings. You are presenting some findings which are close-ended type of question. This is reflected. And yet, qualitative is open-ended. So many degrees, that kind of thing. I wanted you to address that one as well. Then, contribution to knowledge. Are you developing a new model, repackaging the YLP model, which is the variable of study? Okay. Are we coming up with a new model? Because YLP is a tested model which has been used. And lastly, where did you derive the components of the model? Because I have not seen them reflected in the themes, some of the components in the model, in the themes, and also under the research questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much. How much time do we have?
You have as much time as you want to use, but not more than 8
talk about the work by, you say there's a similar work by Westler.
Yes.
And someone.
Yes. Great.
That studied youth
Yes.
And, you indicated that there may be similarities in your submission. You seem to indicate that there may be the same work in Uganda. Now there are procedures here for checking within a private. I will also accept that my work is subjected to such a process. If it is similar with what is out there, then I accept it.
Clarification. Clarification. I don't mean that you copy and paste. But what I'm saying is, and they had this purpose, and their findings are listed, which are similar to your findings. That's where I wanted to take note.
But maybe if you look at me, I'm aware of that work. That work is quantitative, which they did.
That's what he's asking you, and that's what probably is responding to.
Yes. And it is looked at it, but it is quantitative in nature.
Okay, you do us a favor.
From the post list.
Mr. Senator, you do us a favor as a panel. If in response to that question, you probably wrote out your literature survey and give us the gaps that are in the literature survey that your work covers. Not then you take note.
Okay. And then in methodology, Prof, you are addressing the issue that there are issues in interpretivism, because that arrived well as maybe I'll look at that one because it's not clear to me as you have put it. Then in descriptive phenomenological design, I should clarify that and look at it again. But I thought that was an appropriate design.
Yeah.
That aligns with my philosophy and then the paradigm. So that's the link that I wanted to give by adopting those.
The application.
So there is something that can provide me. But I take note of that. And then the is about the model where we derive the aspect, and actually explained that this model is based on gaps identified in the CBD model. And then also, down here, I'm also saying that other than the gaps that are identified in the model, the SUI model also takes into account the challenges that are impeding YLP and the views and opinions of the division. So it is an integrative kind of model. That's my response for
Thank you. Members, in the interest of time, we are going to stop it at that. Yes, those who are following us online and those who are present, are there any questions you want the candidates to respond to? Yes, we'll take two. Rosoke and then Dr.
Yes, thank you so much, Sarah and Mr. Senator, for your presentation. Yeah, regarding the gatekeeping results, I just wanted to ask a simple question. Were there any significant cultural differences among respondents that would have influenced the study findings?
Yes.
Were there any significant cultural
differences among respondents that would have influenced the study findings?
not considered as such?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ssendawula, for having given us a very good presentation. I'm one of those who are joining the voices to say that the presentation was good. However, I just have two comments which you can take note of it. that while you were presenting the methodology, as if I heard you say that the interest of the study was not the sample size. Although this was a qualitative study, I think this was what Professor Norman was talking about. But I think there should be a limit. However, so what I'm saying, maybe you need to be clear about that. And also when you are presenting the findings, as if the verbatim voices were much more than your voice. Because every time you were saying, they say, but what did you say yourself? Thank you very much.
Can I respond to that, Chair? Oh, thank you, Chair. Now, now risk, you run a risk of misrepresenting Professor Nzeko. Professor Nzeko is a positivist researcher, and therefore, please do not refer to him. But my understanding of what you have presented that in reference to sample size determination, I stated that the sample size determination for quantitative research is not in any way taken under numerical representativeness, on constellations of numerical representativeness. No, it is about in-depth understanding. I was looking for the how and why of things. So the sample is emerging, the sample emerges from out there as we interact. And in my presentation, I actually detailed how from each beneficiary, from each category, I was able to derive the sample. And then the second question was my voice. I could not include everything in the slides here. Otherwise, it would be very hard to beat the time of 1 hour. We present a book of over 200 pages. But if you read the ones who have had the privilege of reading my book, there is a lot of more detail there.
Okay.
Yes.
If you will, let me have the last chance. And I hope you will refer to me when you're because your topic is but when you're writing in the abstract, you write differently. You say youth empowerment, and rather say that the youth empowerment was a dependent variable. So I don't know if for you, empowerment flat and youth empowerment are different or they make the same. And then the other is on
empowerment plus.
if you look at your topic,
Yes,
you're writing it as you. When you go to your page 1, the introduction, you say that youth livelihood program was the independent variable, and youth empowerment the objective will not reflect that out. It's just for what you do. Unless there is anything else that you must say before we ask the public out. So yeah?
Yes. I'd like to honestly appreciate all of you, the examiners, the panelists, our online audience who have been following, and the audience in the background. I think they have done a great job. I am sure that what I am seeing here, sure that there are some gaps.
Okay, just to let you know that there are also detailed reports regarding the book. For now, you can leave all your properties there, and we ask the public to give us something good. Audience, yes, you're the first
I think we also request the audience online. Mute.
Okay, we are back. So I have been asked to ask you first how you feel. How? Since you are okay, you know what, the panel has listened to your presentation and made the following observations. Be a quantitative researcher, so you need to take note of that. The panel also makes an observation of the problem, that what is problematic? Is it the livelihood or is it the program? So you need to bring out clearly in your problem statement what really the problem is. We also observe that self is scanty, and that's why there are issues on other researches that have been done that you seem to make no mention of. Like I said earlier, that you seem to be studying causality, but you present qualitative, and your purpose, therefore, you state that you want to evaluate, but then you go off and go into the narratives of the how and what and other questions that you are raising. So you need to reshape the purpose as well. And therefore, the questions should reflect that qualitative study. There are policies that you could look into that would be and the panel observes as well that you need to bring out self-meaning out of the presentation of file, that your analysis needs to be the key themes. Take them to be studied as a whole. The panel, you have been able to score an average of 62%. And that 62% across. Found the changes. The panel also requests that should you be interested in graduating, you will have to work out 2 publications, and the postgraduate school should be informed of where they have been published. We thank you for having as well have come on the virtual. We also thank the public for being present, and also thank those who are listening to us online, and of course the panelists. And I ask that we is there something major that we must listen to from you?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude
my supervisors, the great advice and guidance, and my colleagues around there, and also the senior staff members who have been guiding this process. I also want to thank the supervisors encouraging us and making sure that more people are right to what we are required. Thank you so much. Like this moment, it's not very easy to stay, to speak logically, but I hope that what I have said makes some sense for now.
Okay.
Thank you so much, and give the glory back.
Okay, and on that note, I ask that we dissolve the panel. By the powers entrusted to me, I hereby dissolve this PhD Viva Voce panel today, 15th November 2021. I owe you.
Professor,